I just can't escape it anymore.
We are simply horrified.
On Instagram, on TikTok, every time I open my phone, somebody is furious about the exact same thing.
It is actually illegal to be feeding protected species.
To be honest, the whole thing felt so unnatural and it felt like I was just in SeaWorld.
And I get it, feeding wild animals isn't usually great. You're ruining an endangered species just for a selfie.
Oh yeah, look at these lines, buddy.
I've just got to look into it. I get suspicious. But there's another side to this story. Here's the claim. Swimming with whale sharks, at least where they feed them, is unethical. And if you do it, you're part of the problem. As it happens, I've just been traveling through a whole bunch of eastern Indonesia, through places where whale sharks are treated very, very differently. Some have tourists, some have none at all. So I figured we could actually put this one to the test. What do you reckon? The critics aren't making this up. The receipts mostly come from one place, the world famous Oslob in the Philippines. Oslob started hand-feeding whale sharks in 2011. And since then it's just exploded. Seriously, the lines are crazy. They went from 28,000 visitors a year to more than 500,000 nowadays. The science, it followed. 97% of swimmers get closer than the rules allow. Some 95% of the sharks carry some form of human-caused scars, against just 29% of the wild sites in Australia. And the behaviour, it changes. Fed sharks tend to hang vertically. They kind of beg the boats. It's all real, and it's all peer-reviewed. But none of the studies have ever shown that any whale sharks are disappearing because of the tourism. The debate just sort of assumes that there's two types of shark tourism, the pure and the corrupt. And in my experience, it's a false dichotomy. Visiting vast expanses of Indonesia, it's absolutely nothing like that. There's far more of a grey zone. Welcome to Sumbawa. These square boats are bagans. They're net lift fishing rigs. They were invented by the Bagus and Makassar fishermen. Bagans have worked in Sumbawa, where we are in Sala Bay, way back in the 1950s. A light in the dark night. Guys, this is a Sumbawan fishing boat, and they work in this kind of incredible way. They turn themselves into these giant floating platforms just filled, as you can see, with hundreds of lights. These huge extending arms with hundreds of retaining cables mounted to them and make just this giant square in the middle of the ocean from which they plunge nets directly below. Those lights attract all kinds of things, krill, plankton, tiny baby squids, and that brings in the fish. Wherever these bagans exist, whale sharks quickly habituate. I think now we've just got to somehow engage this drivetrain, just repurposed from a car, and it's going to just straight lift these massive nets underneath this huge square platform right up. We've got 3 kids on each side, just ensuring that this line does not overlap, just carefully letting it wind on in a neat fashion. And these fishing nets, they're well and truly hauling up at this point. I'm pretty interested to see what these guys catch, because I've never seen a fishing technique like this. Guys, I'm lucky enough to have a pretty ridiculous network of friends and family who are just super supportive. And that matters, for sure. But when things get genuinely difficult, I've found that speaking to trained professionals is immensely useful. It's literally what they do. They've likely seen a version of the same problem before. They have experience and practical tools to help you work things out, get back on track. I remember being taught and practicing CBT techniques for the first time, just being able to separate problems that I could solve from worries that I couldn't, and then just choosing practical next steps. I know it sounds pretty basic, simple, but it was helpful to learn, and it was immensely effective. BetterHelp is the sponsor of today's video, and if you're after professional support, they make starting therapy super easy. You take a quiz, get matched quickly with a licensed therapist,
and switch if the fit isn't right. Go to betterhelp.com/Andrew Fraser to get 10% off your first month of therapy. Check it out.
And from the start, they had company, because every net that comes up leaks krill straight out the bottom.
Guys, there's at least one massive whale shark just lurking directly below the boat. I shouldn't be dual cameraing like this. That thing is a monster. It is just wild when you see this thing up close.
The fishermen here told me that they used to actually just spear these sharks, and you can kind of see why. They're a real hassle. It's tough on the gear, it's hard to just not get them tangled. And, of course, they're food. They're the world's largest fish, and you're a fisherman.
Oh.
But this isn't some Indonesian quirk. Before Oslop fed sharks, a dead one had its price there too. They feed them krill, their natural food.
And this is what they're getting fed, just these little tiny shrimp and plankton-like organisms. You can sort of make them out. I mean, it looks to be like a bunch of different creatures, and it is this deep, rich, reddy brown color. That is all these guys eat.
Yeah, I get it. It keeps them around longer, and it allows for this kind of touristy environment.
Now you start to see why this gets controversial. That is a tourist boat pulling up. When these guys haul up the nets, if they have a whale shark, the signal goes out, and the tourist boats are going to be flooding to these areas to try and then swim with the sharks.
I watched people get easily close enough to fin-clipped sharks, but in the whole morning, there was just 3 boats that visited the began I was at. The crowd out here was the fishing boats itself. There are hundreds of these begans.
You can imagine the incentives there. I mean, they're making 10x what they would ever make from fishing, especially using this technique, than they are from just charging a small fee to all of these tourist boats.
The sharks aren't here because the tourists started paying. They followed these nets for 30 odd years, and there's records of sharks feeding in the same bay before begans ever arrived. Studies identified more than 100 individual sharks, mostly juveniles, and 3/4 returned year after year. Tourism, it didn't create any of this. It just walked in. You can even measure exactly what does hurt these animals, and it's not really the tourism. In Papua, where sharks gather at these begans and tourists also swim with them, there, 77% of 268 catalogued sharks carried scars. But 2/3 of those scars were caused by the begans themselves. The propeller strikes, injuries that everybody tends to pin on these tourist boats, that was just 2%. And nobody was able to say whether those came from the fishing boats, the begans, or the tourist infrastructure themselves.
And the worry is that these sharks in this area, that it is habituating them, that they're not going to be able to survive if this kind of tourism ever goes away, and that it's going to just negatively affect the populations, that they're not going to develop in the natural ways that they always have, that they're not going to breed in the same ways that they always have, and that essentially maybe it has this detrimental effect on the populations.
These animals have been habituated for generations, before anybody was buying a ticket, and the evidence says that the harm comes primarily from the fishing and the fishing gear. Across more than a decade of studies at the most criticised sites on Earth, nobody has ever shown that whale sharks are disappearing because of tourism. Here's what tourism actually changes: the number of fishermen in the economy. Oslop doesn't hunt sharks at all anymore, and more than 200 fishermen there work in tourist boats instead of in fishing. That gear comes straight out of the water. And the same thing is happening in Indonesia. The first whale shark protected area is right here in Salah Bay. You might think, well, why not just make hunting whale sharks illegal? Here's the thing, it is. They've been a protected species in Indonesia, along with manta rays, since way back in 2013.
The whale shark is an endangered species and is fully protected by the state under Ministerial Decree number 18, year 2013.
I've filmed these protected animals being hunted year after year, from as close to Bali as Lombok. Just about everything that you could possibly imagine. If there's no incentive from tourism, then why not eat these things? If starving fishermen don't have an incentive to keep a fish alive, they'll probably do what fishermen do. They'll eat the fish.
The reality is most of these boats nowadays are making way more from essentially feeding these sharks than they are doing this traditional fishing technique. You can imagine the incentives there. I mean, they're making 10x what they would ever make from fishing, especially using this technique, than they are from just charging a small fee to all of these tourist boats.
We don't even have to guess. You see, there's still villages where tourists never land. There's no feeding, there's no crowds, there's no one taking selfies. There's whale sharks here, plenty of them. The waters here are loaded with krill. The sharks here are exactly as wild as the day they were born.
Some people have called this the most traditional way to see whale sharks. In fact, this technique goes back more than 600 years. So right now, we're headed to the island of La Morella to see exactly how that goes down.
There's just one small detail. In this village, they call them hiu-boro.
The name for them in the local dialect translates word for word to stupid shark. And that's because they don't even try and run away when they're getting harpooned. So, it's just something that feels so tragic to me about it.
The harpoons are thrown out by hand. And I'm not gonna soften it, but there's no tourism here.
That is a whale shark. Wow, guys, look at that. There's krill inside of a whale shark. Now that they've kind of cut down the middle, they've managed to section this huge shark right down the back, and they just have two just massive sides of whale shark.
The catch is shared and dried because the boats can only work for part of the year, and this meat has to last these guys all year long.
You now have this huge just undercarriage of the fish. Again, I don't think there are any bigger fish. Isn't it actually the biggest fish in the ocean? This thing is massive. They're cutting them in half. Just like everything here, everything is divided between the crew. But it's not exactly perfectly evenly split. You know, the harpooner, the lamafa as they say, gets the largest share, then the captain, and then it kind of rolls on down until you have the deck boy.
But the right wings is only for lamafa.
So they're kind of like giving the right arm of the creature to the lamafa, symbolically.
But the other part is
spread
for
out.
all.
That's how it goes. It's like old school rules. I'm telling you, that's a huge chunk of fish for these blokes. Most days you see these guys driving home with just a mangy little bit of a manta. That is like your standard fare. There's a real limited season with which they have to catch their food. That's why it's all drying up around here. So yeah, you better believe they take care of every single piece of that meat. Tremendous amount of whale meat here. They're keeping the head, they're keeping the liver. If there's 10,000 people in this village, I'd be surprised. And it's the only village left in all of Indonesia that is allowed to do this stuff. You're not putting any form of a dent in the population. 10 times as many whale sharks get run over by boats. Die from pollution. Die from swallowing plastic bags. Than they do from these guys harpooning them. Guys, that's 8 or 9 families. Tremendous amount of meat. I've never seen a flesh like it. It sort of jiggles around, bounces, just wild. It's not firm at all. It almost looks like meat, like jellyfish. That's the closest thing I could come up with.
This sea here is only workable part of the year, so everything gets dried on racks.
There's fish drying everywhere. Well, dolphin isn't really a fish, right?
I was told that since I'd been on the boat and I'd participated in the hunt, that refusing to eat the meat would both break tradition and bring bad luck to the entire village. So here's what whale shark tastes like. Cooking is pretty simple.
So in truth, we've had whale shark once already on this trip. My whale shark owner was cooking it up, and fresh, it is the craziest thing you've ever eaten. So this has been hanging up, and now it's getting fried up. And I think the idea is that it hardens up just enough.
Cooking is pretty simple. It's sliced up and deep fried. It's like the most conflicting bowl of fish and chips you've ever been presented with.
All right, guys, it is that time. This seems kind of brutal. This is a chunk of whale shark.
And yeah, it tastes pretty damn good.
Oh, wow. You know, the thing about it, just like stinky tofu, is it's like right on that line of like, it smells a little bit rotten, but more on the fermented side of things. You know what I mean? It hasn't quite tipped over into the danger zone. And I think it just adds that little bit of curiosity to your mind or something. There's something about this funk that I can kind of see why these guys are still eating whale shark. That makes me kind of sad to say it, but that is so goddamn good. It's just a little bit more-ish. You just want to try a little bit more every bite, and you think, that's a lot. That's a lot of flavor. I don't know if I should keep doing this, but it's tragically good, man. It's rough.
Look, I'm not saying we should go and feed whale sharks everywhere that they rock up. God knows, we don't need another joint like Odslop. That place has got way too much pressure. But in bays where fishing habituated these things decades ago, I just don't see feeding tourism as the root of all evil. It's turning these historical fishing and harpooning areas into protected zones. It's converting boats that had damaging fishing gear in the water into tourist boats that don't. And it's taking pressure off the overcrowded sites like Oslo. And it completely removes the incentive to kill these things. Look, I would love it if every site looked like Ningaloo in Australia or South Ari in the Maldives, where there's just enough natural congregation of sharks on the regular that you can build sustainable tourism industries without feeding, obviously. But there's a reason you've only heard of 2 or 3 of those joints. They just don't exist elsewhere. And I tend to think, after what I've seen, that there's plenty of room in the in-between.
Here's the thought, guys. Maybe it's better that they do feed the sharks so they can make a bit of money from tourism and they don't have to eat them to survive.